So you could see that in Sofia you could buy a pair of jeans. In my country, you couldn't. You're not allowed to to wear a pair of jeans. In Sofia, you could buy a deodorant. In Albania, we are not allowed to have a deodorant. When you think about when you are a young boy, you don't understand too much because you want to be out there to play in the streets. You don't understand what freedom is because more or less you are free as a child, because what the child would want to do in those years is go out and go in the lake, go in the river. So you are free to do those kind of things, but you could always feel that the family, the parents are not free. They are a little bit isolated. They cannot express their feelings. They have to go by the rules and obey by the rules that the government and the dictator is telling us. So you're free to do those things, to play and to enjoy, because there was no cars in the streets, there was no pollution, so there was only bicycles, people going about in bicycles. So in that sense was good, because we could play in the street until late hours in the evening, bare feet, and go home and sleep. And obviously poverty is another thing that as a young boy you don't understand too much, because most of the time we eat vegetables and fruits, because we had gardens that we could grow the vegetables and fruits. But later on you understand that if you want to buy a kilo of meat, that is limited. If you want to buy milk, is limited. The bread was limited, so every house had limited access to certain things. So, but then you have obviously a dream, as same as every young boy. You have a dream, and you have to dream as much as they will allow you to dream. Your dream cannot be beyond the rules. So my dream was that one day I wanted to become a national team player of Albania. I could not bear to think that, I can also play one day for Celtic or Liverpool or Bayern Munich or another team in Italy, whatever. That was not allowed to dream about it. So I had that feeling that I am going to work every day towards my goal, towards my dream, So, and that's what I did. I wake up every morning and going to school and going to train and hoping that one day I will become a national team player of my country. But like everything in life, the things in 90s, that the things started to change in Eastern Bloc. So the communists, they were falling apart, the USSR was getting destroyed. The Berlin Wall went down, and Ceausescu was killed in Romania. So Albania was the last communist country from the bloc that we got away from the communism. Before I became 16 years old, I was selected with under 18 Albania to go and play in a Balkanic Cup, was called at the time. So all the Balkan teams, they played there. There was a cup that was played in different countries of the Balkan countries. So I went to Sofia first time before I was 16 years old. And even though that Sofia was also a communist country, you could see that they were better off than my country. So you could see that in Sofia you could buy a pair of jeans. In my country, you're not allowed to wear a pair of jeans. In Sofia, you could buy a deodorant. In Albania, we are not allowed to have a deodorant. You could have a chewing gum, or you could buy a pair of whatever, a pair of flip-flops in Albania, you are not allowed. So we were kind of restricted to so many things. You know, we were restricted to how we keep our hair, or you cannot keep a beard in our country. So you cannot have blue jeans. So they were all part of the imperialism who used to tell us. And more or less, the communists used to describe the West to us as the devil. Everything was bad in West. People are suffering and people are demonstrating for their rights and so on. So, but then, as I says, I had that opportunity to experience the reality myself. And after that experience, I understood that this is some serious things going on in our country, you know. And then after that tournament, I went to another tournament in Turkey, but we used to travel by bus to go to via Greece, Thessaloniki, and then go to Istanbul. And again, you have one night stop in Greece, and you understand that those people, they have things that we don't even imagine those things exist. So more or less, you start to understand the reality of life. But that was an experience for me and for some of us who had that opportunity. But people back home, they were completely isolated. We were taught, the communists, that we are the best country in the world. Everybody's kind of the West, they are dreaming to have kind of what we have in. So more or less, we were completely brainwashed, and we completely believed the Enver Hoxha, and most of the people were fanatic for Enver Hoxha, you know. And to be honest, was but you start and grow, and you start and understand that that everything is a lie, you know. So, and you start and think that obviously I want to be free, because that's not life. After I finished my school in my football school in Tirana, I wanted to go and follow the University of Sports, which was, again, the University of Sport was in Tirana. And Dinamo had already made a decision to have me for the season 87-88, because I finished my football school on June 87. So I made an agreement with Dinamo that I'm going to start and play for them in September 87. So more or less, we didn't have contracts in Albania. This is all about, we were not allowed to move freely from one town to another town. You need to be a special case. So either you move if you go to the army and you play for Partizan Tirana, because the Partizan was the army club, or you go and play for Dinamo if you go to university, to any of universities, because it was a university of sport and the law, and to become a doctor you had to go to Tirana, because all the universities were in Tirana. So because I earned the rights to go and follow the University of Sport, I decided to go and play for Tirana. But football was not something you could make a living in Albania. Football was just to make a living, you need to have a degree. And my parents always wanted me to have a degree, to go to university, become a lawyer or become a doctor. I decided to become a PE teacher, because that could give me a salary. You know, football could not give you a salary. So for the rest of my life, if I had to continue to live in Albania, and if the regime had continued to be the same, I would have been a PE teacher now by degree.